finansowego, ubezpieczenia, sprzedaż, innowacje, ryzyko, więc w skrócie USIR można mówić.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. USIR, that is ubezpieczenia, sprzedaż, innowacje, ryzyko, insurance, sales, innovations and risk. Welcome to today's event. We are mostly going to use the Polish language. However, if you would like to use interpretation, live translation, there's going to be also interpretation into Polish and English respectively.
Main language of the conference. The devices with the headphones are next to my left, and the English is on channel 2. Proszę Państwa.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we talk about credibility and sustainable development of the insurance world. And so we have got Deloitte, main technological partner, Google, partners, so that's the stock exchange in Warsaw, LuxMed, Cardiff, Poland, insurance, media. This is all the media who are our partners, including Polish Press Agency, and institutional partners, the Polskie Stowarzyszenie Aktuariuszy, so the Polish Association of Actuaries, and also the Chamber of Insurance and Reinsurance Brokers. Some housekeeping. During this conference, and we know that we are approaching the end of the year, we have the special activity, the star, or rather the Santa Claus of the year. And this is a play on words here. This is the interpreter's note. It's a Christmas activity. This is our charity who are organizing that you can buy a present for a child, and the organizers state very clearly that your present may be the only present that that given child is going to receive that Christmas. Up until now, we have had 12 editions, and over 50% of donors are people from the insurance industry. And why am I mentioning that? This is just an introduction. Here on the left, well, my left, your right, next to the translation devices, contains a link where you can download all the information. You can visit that website and register. I strongly encourage you to do that. I think that's it for housekeeping, and now is the time for the official opening. Professor Leszek Pawłowicz, the coordinator of the European Financial Congress, and also the representative of Deloitte, Marcin Waszewski, from the Program Council of the conference. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leszek Pawłowicz. For over 10 years, I have been the coordinator of the European Financial Congress. Every year, we've been organizing it in June in Sopot, in the north of Poland. And also the initiator of this coordinator of the Financial Congress. But it's not just personally, but it's Rafał Planiewski in cooperation with Deloitte. So I wanted to welcome you to this event and also explain why we are doing this. What is the purpose of this enterprise, of this undertaking? When we started over 10 years ago, European Financial Congress in Sopot, now we would like to start the European Insurers Congress. We do so bearing in mind that the insurance industry has been participating in our support Congress. But what's more, the insurance world also participates very actively, especially looking at various reports and opinions for the EU Commission, for the European Financial Supervision Activity and Banking bodies as well. And that is very important for the financial bodies and financial landscape in Europe. We have got a few persons present here in this hall participating in this undertaking. I would like to thank you for that. We have got over 360 persons who on a pro bono basis participate in the discussion about the future of the financial market in Europe. We would like this part connected with the insurance market, that it will also be represented, so that we would also enter this European discussion. And so this is why we would like to organize the European Insurance Congress the way we organize European Financial Congress. So maybe in the future it will be a joint event. However, that is our future vision, so that we really create a platform for debates in Poland, inviting foreign speakers, a platform where we can talk and discuss the future risks, chances of the insurance sector. But more importantly, as a result of those debates, we will get to know each other, we will understand each other better. But the most important thing is that we will formulate recommendations that are to make this market in Poland and in Europe better. There's nothing perfect. This is why we are working in the banking sector, and whether they listen to us or not, sometimes it is difficult to assess. However, we are working on what the ideal market for mortgages should look like in Poland. We gather experience from different countries, and especially we look at Denmark, because Denmark also offers different interesting solutions, so that mortgage bonds may be interesting for our market as well. So this is a think tank that is active the whole year round, but twice a year we meet during such debates. We don't do it online, so that we can do it really face to face. We can do it live. We can meet and exchange ideas. This is our vision. This is our plan, together with Mr. Broniewski, who is coordinator of this enterprise. Within 3 years, we would like to reach the level that we have got in the European Financial Congress, which is mostly directed at the banking market. In the other undertaking, we have about 1,600 people. 1,600 is actually the limit, because that is the conference center in Sheraton. In Sopot, we cannot fit more people in, but we can see a growing interest. And we hope that within 3 years, we are going to achieve something similar for the insurance market. As I've mentioned, our goal is not just organizing congresses, but to suggest something sensible for Poland and also for Europe. There are a lot of young people, a lot of students and youth who participate in this undertaking. We cooperate with universities, we ask supervisors of master thesis and MSc thesis as well to suggest who could participate in such an event, and it would be interesting. And for 10 years, such students publish, well, we publish it, but students write what they would change in Poland and in Europe. We hope to do the same for the insurance industry. And these are 100 students who are the best students in the eyes of the supervisors.
My colleague Broniewski, coordinator of this event, has also asked me to welcome naturally all of you, and I'm very satisfied that you've all devoted so much time to participate that you have decided to join in. But I'd like to welcome our guests who have traveled far and wide in order to join us. And I would like to welcome them in particular. Firstly, Professor Van Hule, who his authority of high repute in the insurance sector, in the across Europe, in the academic world, and highly respected among my colleagues of the academia in Poland. Professor, congratulations for that. Professor Van Hula has fathered Solvency II amongst his achievements, so we're honored by his presence. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Tobias Sondorfer, a member of the board of directors of the reinsurance institution from Vienna, of Vic Re, and thank you for your presence. In a moment, in fact, we will be joined by Petros Nikolaus of Czechia, of the Alliance Group for the CEE region. He's not here yet, but he should be joining us very soon. Finally, I'd like to extend my thanks to all of our partners that have been mentioned by the previous speaker, particularly Deloitte, who has committed to be with us for the upcoming 3 years and will be assisting us in substantive aspects. The programming council is with us in the person of Mr. Marszewski. I also thank all of the members of this council and ask you to continue the opening. Professor, thank you very much. On behalf of the programming council of our conference, that I happen to be the chair of, I welcome you. This is the first edition of our conference. As we spoke with Professor Mr. Leszek Pawłowicz, which was a couple of months ago, about the objectives and purpose of this meeting, we set out a very ambitious goal for ourselves to ensure that this be a meeting place and a place of exchange of views of insurers, brokers, agents, and regulatory and supervisory institutions, academia, and users. This is not something that has been on the map of this sector. We'd like the outcome of this forum is to find a true closeness among all of the stakeholders of this. We want this to contribute into sustainable development of Poland in a significant way. I believe that next year we will have an even broader representation Over the past months, I had overseen the work of the Programming Council, which prepared the content of this conference. And I'd like to extend my thank you to this group of people, which numbered more than 20. The topic teams worked and devoted much of their attention, time on that. A brief description of the program before we start the conference with the presentation of Professor Hülle, and then his discussion with the CEO of PZU SA. We will follow with Mr. Petras Papalikolaou presenting to us the development of the insurance sector in our region. Then we'll have a discussion on the macroeconomic outlook with Ms. Eliza Przejdziewska of the Warsaw School of Economics, and Mr. Marek Teichman will be of the Gazeta Prawna weeklies, will moderate this. We will also look from the perspective of the reinsurance at the market that is much dependent on the capacity of the reinsurers. So these are the three key topics: sales, innovation, and risk management. These are the key topics. Mr. Tomasz Majka will look at the digitalization of the insurance sector debate, how not to look the perspective of the client and the experience of the client in this process. If I were to say what is one of the most important things in the coming years that will determine the market, insurance market, I would say trust of the client to the market. And we need to talk about what builds that trust, what makes them feel trusting. And Director of BNP Paribas Cardiff will moderate the discussion on that. And we have two. So these are important events. Over the past 6 months, no conference has skipped the topic of artificial intelligence, and we need to touch on that subject. But we will devote 15 minutes to that, and together with Łukasz, we will try and answer whether this is going to be a revolution indeed. And then we will talk about outsourcing, how outsourcing changes insurers, what are the barriers, what are the opportunities. And third topic, risk. Two interesting discussions. One, Irena Pichon of Deloitte consultancy will be moderating this and looking at the gaps and changes in the economy and how they drive the need for new products, how insurers can contribute to the development of the economy. And second, demographic changes debate, which is a main challenge faced by Polish economy. We are looking at how this demography is going to impact the insurance sector, both the opportunities and threats. And the Wrocław Economic University provost will chair that. And of course we will talk about various discussions on the bank guarantee fund and support. So I believe that they will be a valuable input into your experience and time. Thank you for your attention, and handing over to Barbara Barczuk to moderate. The name is Dagmara Wieczorek-Bartczak. Apologies. Apologies. I happen to be taller than the microphone setup. Thank you again. I'd like to thank warmly the organizers for the Bank Guarantee Fund and for inviting me to this event. I'm happy that the formula of the European Financial Congress has been expanded to include insurance as an independent event, which we have today. That one of my professional dreams is being fulfilled, the role and place of insurance in the Polish market, bearing in mind the importance of insurance for the transaction, economic transfer, financial market operation, protection of clients and safety of clients. I'd like insurance to have their rightful place in the public space and be granted appropriate respect. Now, because of the products offered, this protects us against the materialization of risk and its consequences, but because of its unique nature, it can be a very important addition to economy and can play a role of a long-term investor. Their role should be perceived and valued, and the regulations relating to the sector should bear in mind the fact that this is an independent, important element of the financial market. In my opinion, the role of our sector will, in the future, grow. In the future, let us say, to my mind, insurance is important in terms of energy transformation of our country. The landscape changes, new areas of risk appear, and the existing types of risk change in terms of their impact and probability of occurrence. Let's mention climate risk, demographic-related risk, or technology-related risks, which you will be discussing today. Another important professional dream has been the new approach of the insurance sector to the changing landscape. I'd like the insurance to be put as leaders in terms of developing solutions for their clients. In my personal opinion, insurance should also act as a paragon of changes in the market. We'd like us to be the leaders, avant-garde. We should not be passively awaiting changes in regulations and then complain that they are not consistent with our needs. Consistent approach to regulations, which we need to or wish to implement, we need to do in a systematic manner, fully aware of the consequences and predictable. The response should be more agile, with a long-term view, particularly strategic development of the economy, the entire sector, products, insurance products, and the changing needs of our clients. Particularly that changes, including regulatory changes, will continue increasing, and they will be important for our sector. They will be important for me personally, because from the perspective of our banking insurance fund, I'm responsible for creating the best mechanism for organized liquidation mechanisms and resolution. The work are an example of a strategic approach. We started working on this early, firstly to understand the directives proposal and then develop a regulation that will be beneficial for the Polish market so that it would reflect it into the realities of Poland. This is minimal harmonization directive, which means that the detailed regulations can be shaped in Warsaw rather than Brussels. And moving to the third professional dream, I'd like the IRD implementation be the best possible regulations developed through a dialogue of all of the stakeholders. I mean the sector, legislator, and the insurance fund, and the, in my opinion, resolution is a needed mechanism and important for the sector, insurance sector. The work on resolution in insurance mean that we are a mature sector, that a organized way of solving difficult problems is important. It strengthens trust in the insurance sector. This is not a mechanism we should be fearful of. The effect will be appropriate regulations that will reflect needs adequately. No one wants to copy the regulations of the directors directly, and we all know that. I really wish for a dialogue of all the parties concerned, which is why I invite you to discuss these matters, to familiarize yourselves with this, how the banking insurance fund has approached this, and what is the extent of the work that we've done. I will be inviting you to my presentation at 1:35 p.m. This will, I hope, be the first step in this broad dialogue that we are very much hoping for. Thank you very much.
Bardzo dziękuję pani prezes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President. And now I would like to invite you to the lecture of Professor Karen van Hulen about the future of the insurance sector in Europe. After the lecture, we are going to have a fireside chat with President Maciej Rabkiewicz, already mentioned. Professor van Hulen, the floor is yours.
Dzień dobry. I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm not in a position to address you in Polish. And I apologize, but I would like to start my presentation by congratulating you for organizing a specific insurance conference. I know from experience as a former regulator in the European Union how often the important role that insurance can play is underestimated. And in many cases, insurance issues will be discussed at the end of a conference, just almost by accident. So I want to congratulate you for this initiative. But I've also come to bring you good news. The future of the insurance industry is great if you do what people expect you to do. And that is to take the risks away from private individuals and businesses. If you do that, the future is bright. Insurance is about risk. And as you know, people are risk averse. And this is the world in which we live. People are risk averse, naturally. That's to say that they will normally not think about their risks. You, as insurers, you love risks. You believe that you can manage them, that you can model them, and sometimes you're carried away by your own models. Many risks have a probability of 100%. We know they will happen, but some aspects of them, like variability, ambiguity, and blind spots, are uncertain. And we need to watch out for what we call now no longer the white, the black, but the gray swans. We know these events are coming, but we don't always realize that. And I'm sure that you all know the changing risk landscape. All these risks, I've tried to list them on this slide. You know them. They're published by the World Economic Forum, by the CRO Forum, sometimes by individual insurance companies, and they're manifold, and they're even more than those that I have listed here. Looking now at the insurance industry, confronted with all these risks, I would say that you should say, if I have a healthy risk appetite, I can take care of those risks. And I very much agree with the previous speaker that regulation cannot deal with everything. And do not wait for regulation to make things clearer. Risk regulation usually comes the morning after. There will always be new risks, and indeed not all the risks should be regulated. Risk regulation is likely to increase, this is important, when there is a feeling that risks are not properly addressed by the public or the private sector. And I would like to refer here to the still increasing number of protection gaps that we see in the insurance area. So basically, there is great potential. But a world without risk would be a nightmare for you. But what do we see? That in some parts of the world, the insurance industry is running away from the risks. For instance, in the United States, we've seen in California and Florida that insurers are moving out of the states. But we see also globally that some of the reinsurers have announced that they want to reduce their capacity for the insurance of Nat Cat. Although major risks such as climate change, longevity, healthcare, cyber risk are increasing, more and more people remain unprotected by insurance. Emerging risks are often met with exclusion clauses or receive unattractive coverage. We've seen that during the pandemic, but also the war exclusion clauses. There is a general lack of innovative insurance products that take account of the new risk reality. And we can say sometimes that insurance is seen as the problem and not as the solution. And there, socio-economic importance of insurance. A modern society cannot function efficiently when private persons and businesses have to bear their own risks. The objective of insurance is to take away risks from private persons and businesses by pooling these risks with application of the law of large numbers. It is an illusion to believe that major risks, such as health, longevity, pension, long-term health care, natural catastrophes or pandemics, can be managed solely by the state or by private sector insurance. The present insurance protection gap is not acceptable, and it will only be resolved if all parties in the insurance value chain play their role. Public-private partnerships, which is often cited as a solution to take care of these major risks that we face today, they will only work if the insurance industry is prepared to put skin in the game, and if governments do not take over the role that private insurers should play. We already heard this morning about regulation, ever-increasing EU regulation. I call it, ladies and gentlemen, a regulatory diarrhea. And I've listed on this slide some of this legislation. Not because, don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying that all that regulation may not be necessary, but the way in which it comes about. I heard this morning the talk about consultation, participation in the exercise, impact assessment, that is important. And the problems that we see today with the European regulatory approach, whereby we have horizontal regulation that doesn't always take account of the sectoral consequences, so that you have legislation that is not adapted to the specific needs, for instance, of the insurance sector. We have a system of regulation with level 1, the principles, but then we need level 2, level 3. And we don't in the end know what the impact of all that is going to be. And that's unfair. And we need to do something about that. And following on with what you said just before me, now is the time to think about that. Because after the European elections, the new Commission will have to decide in which area we should move in financial services regulation. And now is the time to think about it and to come up with some good ideas. So let us look at the way forward. I'm going to list actions first that insurers should avoid. Avoid waiting with addressing emerging risks until specific guidance is provided by regulators or supervisors. Address emerging risks by simply excluding these risks from insurance policies, thereby making these risks uninsurable. Make the terms and conditions in insurance policies so vague and unclear that policyholders do not longer know what is covered and what is not covered. Proclaim to be a sustainable insurer and continue to invest in brown assets or to underwrite dirty projects. Promote public-private partnerships, but expect all the actions and the money to come from public authorities. And continue to provide insurance products that nobody needs. So what should you do? Well, develop innovative products that address emerging risks. When I make that statement at another conference, people in the insurance industry say, "Professor, can you give me some examples?" I say, it's not for me to find examples, but innovation is very important. Promote resilience through underwriting and investment strategies. Make emerging risks insurable. Enter into partnerships with the public sector to develop protection products and to educate people on risk. Incentivize appropriate behavior of clients by making insurance solutions attractive, for instance, through improved rates. Provide expertise to clients on risk prevention and risk mitigation. Combine investments in properties, for instance, with the management of these properties, like elderly homes, hospitals. Make insurance the solution rather than the problem by making life more pleasant. Because, ladies and gentlemen, emerging risks bring opportunities. The emerging risks that can be found in the lists that are regularly published by the World Economic Forum or the CRO Forum contain challenges, but at the same time, an invitation for the insurance industry to engage. The development of sophisticated risk transfer mechanisms by reinsurers, and you will hear about that later today, for instance, the area of natural catastrophes, should be further expanded to also cover other emerging risks. Unless insurers become more empathic and more innovative, other players, and you know them, will take on the role of risk protection and risk mitigation. Reducing the ever-increasing number of protection gaps must become a priority for the insurance industry. And risk regulation can help, but it should not be used to artificially increase prudence or to artificially reduce capital requirements to the detriment of policyholder protection. To sum up, ladies and gentlemen, we live in risky times, but the future is yours if you do what people would like you to do, to help them in making this world a better place. Thank you very much.
Please now take one of these chairs. Okay. Dziękujemy bardzo za przypomnienie, czym ubezpieczenia są, czym.
Thank you very much for this reminder of what insurance is and should be. And I'm sure that you have got many questions to Professor, but it's going to be our president who's going to ask these questions.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Dziękuję bardzo panu profesorowi Pawłowiczowi za zaproszenie. To dla mnie duży.
Thank you very much, Professor Pawłowicz, for inviting me. It's a great honor and pleasure to be speaking to Professor Hülle. We did speak briefly before our official kickoff, I find myself in a difficult situation because I agree about most of the proposed ideas, but let me just add a little bit of Polish context to what we've heard from Professor right now in terms of future of the insurance sector throughout Europe. And I would just accentuate a number of things. We can be proud of our economic growth over the past decades, a number of decades. And this is clearly a consequence. As a consequence, our wealth as a society has grown. And insurance, of course, has a very close link to how insurance sector can grow in terms of economic growth. But our increased wealth and economic growth is not so clearly visible in the, or is not reflected in the insurance indices, such as density or penetration of insurance products. So in spite of this significant growth of the past years, Poland remains far behind our peers, in those peers in terms of economic growth, particularly when we look at life insurance products. We're far behind Slovakia, Greece even, and where economic growth, we have surpassed their economic growth clearly. We have much to achieve, of course, here, and we need to build awareness of the products among the society at large, potential insured clients of insurance, to narrow down the gap and shorten the distance so that we can grow. So let me start with that, with my first question. Do you, Professor, have any reflections, ideas about how this sector can build awareness of the products?
Yes, indeed. By the way, the fact that the penetration rate of insurance is low means that there is growth potential. There are other countries which are overinsured and where the insurance industry is struggling to find new products. Not that it is not possible. And I believe that the best way to increase the penetration rate is to embark on an exercise of education. People are naturally risk averse. You can come up in the market with interesting, innovative products that people will find attractive. But it is very important, and it is one of the reasons why sometimes in Central and Eastern Europe insurance markets are not developing, is that the insurance industry has a tendency not to be sufficiently empathic. So the first thing you do with your customer when a risk emerges, you say, you're not covered. Or the compensation comes much too slowly. Or not in the way that the consumers believed it would go. So these are areas where improvements are certainly possible.
Thank you very much. Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you for that reflection. Professor, you've also mentioned potential areas of investment. You've investment into which the sector should be pursuing. And you mentioned the need to changes of rules through the funds. These types of investments are highly capital intensive, and that can lower our competitiveness. Do you believe that there is need for potential realignment here?
there always is a tendency in the insurance industry to complain about high capital charges and calibrations. I will release you a secret. Nobody in this world knows exactly what the risk calibration of any risk is. It is always a range. And people can diverge in their views. That means that there is potential. And Solvency II is now being reviewed. And in the context of Solvency II review, there will be a release of capital. How much, I don't know, nobody knows because the final decision has not yet been made. But the risk margin, for instance, in the calculation of technical provisions will be reduced, which will release some of the capital which I believe, and I agree that it should be reduced, some of the capital that supervisors put in there a little bit as fat in technical provisions. And that is maybe a little bit overprudent. On the other hand, I think if you talk about investments by the insurance industry, when capital is going to be released, we hope that that capital will be invested in infrastructure, in good products that further our world in the direction of sustainability.
Thank you very much. Maybe one more question. Ja mam przyjemność reprezentować największego.
A question comes. I have the pleasure of representing the largest insurer, not just in Poland, but in the CEE region. Now, this might, in your opinion, these new regulations that you've just mentioned, very demanding for the sector, and I don't want to debate this with representatives of the insurance regulators, but I'm thinking about the impact on the competitiveness of the market and capability of adjustment by smaller players, the smaller players that I'm concerned about.
I fully share your concern. And I've actually recently said so in a conference in Croatia. The problem is that in Central and Eastern Europe, where the insurance tradition obviously is newer than in some of the old European countries, members of the European Union, you have a number of small, medium-sized players. And what we see happening is that there is more and more concentration in the market, that local insurers disappear. This is not good, because concentration in the market automatically means less innovation, less diversity in insurance products offered. So how can regulation deal with this matter? You all know, and you are waiting for me to pronounce the word proportionality. We need to have a system whereby the rules better take into account the particular situation of small and medium-sized insurers. And I think that we are all sinning in this respect. The regulators write too many rules without making that distinction, and the supervisors are hesitant to allow proportionality to be applied in practice. So going forward, how can we resolve this issue or contribute to reducing the problem? I think is by having a more specific implementation of the proportionality principle, but also by introducing rules with transition periods, something we've forgotten in Europe. It is not necessary to have all these rules apply immediately. The world existed before the rules. Let's introduce them gradually with transitions so that companies can prepare themselves and are not at breakfast confronted with a new diarrhea of rules that they have to apply as of tomorrow.
Bardzo dziękuję. Thank you very much. Może kolejne.
Allow me It is with great interest that I listen to your presentation on risk. The catalogue of the risks that we as a sector face. There was a long list of these risks. If you could categorize the top three. Our colleague from Deloitte has mentioned the major demographic risk. All this is really combined because demographics impact the market, labor market, inflationary pressures occur, economic growth is affected. And this is also, we have social economic pressures with the war in Ukraine raging. Could you classify the top three risks for us, challenges and risks? Yes.
We are all inclined to do that. We love rankings. I hesitate to do that because I believe that the list of risks that we have seen, all these risks are relevant and they will change in intensity as the economics or the political world evolves. So the disadvantage of ranking these lists is that we tend to forget about the other ones. And you will see that if I would rank them now, that my number 5 may be tomorrow number 1. And that's why I hesitate to do that. But if you ask me what I personally believe to be real issues to be addressed, I think this is the long-term risk of demographic change. It's a fact in all our countries. People are under-financed for their pensions. It's a huge issue. Life insurance can help to that. We need to think about ways and means to address that issue, and it should always be on top of the list. The other risk that I believe is very important is natural catastrophes. You, I, all of us will be confronted before the end of the year with new catastrophes, floodings, storms, and people remain unprotected. This is urgent. This needs to be addressed, and I would hope that companies like yours, which I got to know when Poland joined the European Union, would help in addressing this problem.
Thank you very much for this answer. Maybe among these, może również pośród tych ryzyk.
Among those risks, do you possibly also see, to some extent, the risk of cybersecurity or cyber threat? Because this is overlaid by the geopolitical situation. This could be an instrument that, unfortunately, a hybrid attack, and the insurer's role here could be the support of insured entities in this specific respect.
It is a very important issue. I entirely agree with you. But here I would say we should all start by prevention. You know, it's a risk that to some extent we can prevent, and we should do it. And then the insurance industry should be more courageous. We do not yet have good cybersecurity protection policies. There's too much exclusion. We should start to have better policies so that more people would buy these policies. And if the pool becomes larger, we might even develop public-private partnership solutions that would take care of a major cyber attack that would, for instance, destroy the infrastructure. But we should start at the bottom. Prevention, courage in the insurance industry to develop good cybersecurity policies. We can apply for cybersecurity risk, I'm pleased to say that, also risk transfer mechanisms like insurance-linked securities, transfer them to the capital market. There are possibilities to do that. Let's just do it, ladies and gentlemen.
So as far as I know, our time is running.
Pan profesor Pawłowicz zgodził się,
Professor Pawłowicz agreed that we could have a Q&A, maybe 2 or 3 questions from the floor, if Professor is accepting of that. If there are specific questions to Professor, well, this is the moment to ask them. I believe there are no questions, which means Professor has really done a great job for us. Thank you very much for the both presentation and the discussion. Thank you once again very much.